expedition in the autumn of 46, the early spring of 47, to the South Pole. This is an expedition that has been almost forgotten, and it's very hard to come up with any information about it. The few articles that were published at that time in, let's say, National Geographic magazine would not give any clue to the real intention of that expedition. However, recently we discovered a unique documentary film in color, 1 hour long, made by the U.S. Navy. It was a massive naval operation that involved an aircraft carrier, several battleships, an armed submarine, and probably another 20 supply and battleships. It involved 4,000 troops, U.S. troops, and the rumor is that there were also British and Russian contingents within these 4,000 troops. It was a massive naval operation. It was not, as it has been presented to the public, that it was a peaceful expedition to explore the natural resources of the South Pole. They descended to Little America, which is the place of the previous Admiral Byrd landings on the South Pole. And then they started a massive overflight over the whole area of the South Pole, trying to locate the German base that was established there almost 10 years earlier. The Germans started somewhere in 1936-37 seriously exploring the South Pole, and by the time the war ended, the rumor is that they have established a massive underground colony with at least 100,000 scientists, researchers, elite SS troops, children from Hitlerjugend, young boys and girls that were to become the seed of this new and colony that was to be built under the principles of the super race selection.
In our research in Africa, the Far East, and in the mountains of South America, we have come across statuary of very grotesque beings who, according to the Indian and shamanistic tradition, went into the earth at a time of a great cataclysm. If we take Atlantis as a model for survival, it is clear in the folklore and literature of the major continents of our planet that some of the races went into the earth. I brought with me from Africa pictures of these grotesque serpent-like beings. Many of them correspond to the extraterrestrial reports and photographs of some of these so-called snake people or serpent people. It is very clear also that there was the survival of the ancestry of the Adamic race referred to in our scriptures, as well as in the teachings of the Hungarian and German people that came out of the Gobi area. It is in this area of Lap Nor that we have recently found evidences of an earlier European type humanity that did survive some type of cataclysm according to the myths of the Far East. We have thus in our tradition a vast folklore, anthropology, and cosmology that connect the peoples of this planet with that of other worlds.
The Nazis were better informed by the secret esoteric orders and had exact knowledge about the lost cities of Agharta and Shambhala. Many of their expeditions involved searching for the entrances into the inner world and the lost techniques of the gods. That is, UFOs, the Ark of the Covenant, and much more. Thus, films like Indiana Jones are not mere fiction. German expedition in search of Agharta. Some esoteric correlations of the 19th century and of the Third Reich are hidden nowadays under a veil of the past. Thus, only some isolated relationships can be uncovered. For a while, Dietrich Eckart lived at the foot of the mountain Untersberg and was initiated into the medieval mysteries and into the legends of caves. Adolf Hitler spent many hours with Dietrich Eckart at the Obersalzberg mountain, and both were followers of the hollow earth theory of Hans Erbinger. The Untersberg was already considered by the Templars to be a volcano with an access to the inner earth and to the legendary hollow world. Thus, there are stories of the disappearances of people in the Untersberg and how, 60 years later, the same people surfaced without having aged. Other German legends deal with the myth of the end of the world. In the legends, King Barbarossa is asleep in the mountain, and after hundreds of years he rises up with his knights for the last battle at the end of time, in order to help good triumph.
I'm speaking now as a scientist. I do not want to confuse subsurface temples and grottos and structures of civilizations that go down approximately a mile or two from the surface of the earth with the so-called inner earth theory. In my work in Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, it is clear that there are vast tunnel systems that go hundreds of kilometers under the mountains, allowing the Indian peoples to connect between national borders. We know also between Mexico and New Mexico, North America, that the Indians have a subterranean system of corridors that allow the tribal federations from North America to meet, even privately, without notifying the American or Mexican authorities. Clearly, these structures are there as a result of some type of volcanic activity or catastrophic event some 28 million years ago, as we have measured in areas of North Mexico, where the surface of the earth changed, allowing volcanic openings and porous materials to construct, as it were, underground cavities. Into these cavities, members of the human society found shelter from the noxious poisons and gases and orders of destruction that took place rather suddenly. If we look at our planetary system, there is an obvious grid of underground cavities, from the areas of the Gobi areas of Central Asia to the areas of Malta in the Mediterranean to areas even of the mountains of Untersberg in Central Europe, Mont Blanc, Jungfrau, to areas we have specifically worked with seismology in central North Mexico, and also areas of the Andes. Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia in particular have underground structures that run for hundreds of kilometers. In Southeast Asia, we know that these structures also exist in the areas of Sumatra, Borneo, and Indonesia. Clearly, throughout the world, there are major areas which seem to be contact points with parallel evolution.
Dietrich Eckart shaped Hitler's thinking more than we can imagine today. He also directed him towards a mediumistic education and showed him how to make contact with the spiritual world, in particular with the Germanic gods and the ancient Hypereia people from Agharta. Thus, the leader became a guided one who communicated with the spiritual world and the masters of Agharta. Only when he had developed these mediumistic attributes to the full did Dietrich Eckart propagate the idea of a leader, Führer, in the Thule society and in the popular esoteric circles. Already in the First World War, the German military sent various expeditions, which later were known as German colonies. Some esoteric followers, like General Ludendorff, who had access to the foundations and connections to the secret orders and castles, supported the expeditions and their search for the lost cities and treasures of the old Atlantean high cultures. In the early 20s, in a privately financed expedition, Edmund Kiss explored various regions of South America and discovered a wide-ranging system of caves with an opening to the inner earth. The different esoteric societies with their secret orders, country estates, and later also their castles were the meeting points of the esoteric elite, which saw itself as guided to resurrect the old knowledge of Atlantis and of the Indo-Germanic prophecies. The society that dealt with the lost technology of the gods and their impelling force was the so-called Friel Society. This society collected all the information dealing with the technology of polarity and levitation. When the National Socialists came to power and the old leagues and alliances had accomplished their duty, the esoteric followers of the time began to carry out their expeditions at the state's cost. Various secret working circles financed by the Third Reich were established. The committee of the group, Heirs of the Ancestors, was concerned with the study of races, and some high esoteric followers were contracted to investigate the past of the Aryan race with all